Hi, welcome to My Comic Crush. I'm Vickie Sebring, and I love comics. So let's dive into a long box and see what we find. Joining me this week is my co-host, Scott Sebring.
Hey, everybody.
And you'll have to forgive us this week if we sound a little rough. We are just coming back from San Diego Comic-Con.
Yeah, and we both probably kind of came down with a bit of con crud.
The infamous con crud that many con goers are so familiar with.
It would be really nice to breathe through my nose again.
But we had a great time, and that's what we're going to talk to you about. Not necessarily the whole experience of Comic-Con, because I don't think any one person or being can cover all of it. It's too massive. But our personal experience with Comic-Con and what we love about it and what we loved about this year.
We didn't really catch like a lot of panels and those kind of things.
No, I don't like to spend my con time standing in line too much. It's just not what I want to do while I'm there. Panels are fun and they're cool, but I'd rather be out and meeting people and interacting on the floor than standing in a line. So unless it's something I'm really dying to see, and I don't have to spend that long in line to see it, I'm probably not going to go. That said, we did catch the 1970s panel hosted by Mark Evanier.
The great and wonderful Mark Evanier.
With a fabulous lineup. You had Howard Victor, Elliot S. Maggin, Marv Wolfman, Paul Levitt, and even though he came in late, you had the fabulous Paul Gulacy.
Well, from my understanding, Paul Gulacy was like doing 3 panels exactly at the same time. I don't know how he does it all.
Hey, it's good to be popular. You know, it's good to be in demand. Rightly so.
And once again, you mentioned there was Marv Wolfman there.
Yeah, my Marv, man.
I mean, the show is called My Comic Crush, but it might as well just...
He's one of my crushes. His writing has definitely been one of my long-time crushes.
But we actually got to meet him on the floor.
Yes, we stopped by his table. I actually got to buy 2 Titan scripts. Woo! Signed by him. I mean, you get to the script. You get to see his little notes, his little details. Cool stuff, man. So cool.
I mean, he was pointing out in this particular script how he was giving instructions to the artist about sign language because it was incorporated into this particular story.
Right. A lot of research goes in to writing a story. When you read it and you see the finished product, you're just immersed in the world. But, writers don't instinctively know all the stuff that they have to put into to make their worlds believable. They have to research this stuff. That's work, man. So kudos, props. Thank you, sir.
And he was very nice.
He's always very nice. He's always very nice. Yes, he is.
But back to the panel, I mean, like I said, you had...
Mark Evanier is Master of Ceremonies, and he always does such a fabulous job as Master of Ceremonies.
He asked the good questions.
He asks the good questions. He has good stories and good tidbits to interject, and he's very good at drawing out the best of his panelists and guests. So,
since we didn't go to, that was the only panel I attended at this con, and
that was the only one we actually managed to physically make. We were hoping to catch some other panels, but due to time constraints and just the length of lines, we just had to bail.
I made a point of going over to the Shout booth because they were selling the new Blu-ray of the motion comic for Red Sonja.
I am so excited to watch that.
Which, of course, you had Misty Lee doing the voice of Red Sonja, and it was written by...
Gail Simone. Woo!
Regretfully, you weren't with me at the time because you were actually doing a stint as a volunteer.
Yes, that's one of the things I do at STCC. I'm part of the volunteer program, so I spend time, standing at lines with signs in the sun dying or yelling things out loudly for people to hear, which I'm very good at. Yes, I am. And sometimes other functions, so you never know what you might wind up doing. But, I like to do my bit to help out.
And I'm really looking forward to catching the Red Sonja motion comic. I actually dig motion comics.
I think motion comics are pretty cool. Most of the motion comics that I've seen come out in recent years have been well done and really cool. So I'm excited to see it.
There's no substitute for actually reading the comic itself, but motion comics actually kind of remind me of those old Marvel cartoons from the 60s of Iron Man and Captain America, because those were darn near motion comics. The animation was so limited.
There's not a whole lot of difference there, other maybe than a little improvement in the art just because of budgetary reasons. But I agree, they do very harken back to those older, earlier limited animation cartoons, and they're very cool.
Now, you don't usually really spend much money when you're over at con, other than on the con itself and food and...
Yeah, I don't normally go too cuckoo with buying things unless I find, good deals in the dollar bins on the comics, I've been known to spend some time digging through those. But normally I don't spend a lot of money at a con, this is true. But this year they seem to be like targeting me.
Yeah, it just seemed like there was little laser beams pointing right at you for your dollars. And
Man, they had some freaking awesome t-shirts. I mean, I got a classic Ms. Marvel Carol Danvers t-shirt with the lightning bolt and a red sash around the hips. I mean...
Looked like you're wearing her uniform kind
looks
of t-shirt.
like you're wearing her uniform. It like screamed at me. Couldn't turn it away. I got a awesome Carol Danvers Captain Marvel t-shirt, which was really, really cool. And I found a t-shirt with the cover of X-Men number 141, Days of Future Past. What?
And it was just like boom, boom, boom. Just
everywhere
hitting you one
I
after
turned. I
another.
mean, most of this was on preview night too, which is like crazy. It's like every time I turn around, they're hitting me over the head with a t-shirt or something that I just have to have. What are you going to do?
But I mean, we were hanging in the comic book area quite a bit, looking at various back issues and...
Well, that's the good... I have to say, they had some really phenomenal deals this year on hardcover compilations, trade paperbacks, awesome stuff, man.
Some of those omnibuses were then ridiculously low prices.
Some of those omnibuses were just like so hard to pass up because you're like, it's only how much?
One of the omnibuses I was actually most impressed with was the Infinity Gauntlet one.
Yes, couldn't pass that one up. Had to get the Infinity Gauntlet and hardcover.
Because it was comprehensive. It went through all these various comics through time and titles to piece together all the little bits and pieces that make up the Infinity Gauntlet saga, as it were. So rather than digging through this one and that one and where was this one and that, it was like they took all the asterisks and put them together in one book.
Which is awesome. I have to say, as much as a fan as I am of having the actual back issues and having the complete storyline in the comic itself, the omnibus, where you get everything from various different titles all together in one compact, easy, read-through-it form, I love those. That's so awesome. Because then I don't have to dig through each of the various titles to find the asterisks and dig up the next bit of the story. It's just all right there. It's great.
Nice to have it if you got it.
It's nice to have both.
So needless to say, we picked up that one.
Yes, couldn't pass it by.
There were some cool trailers that came out.
The Wonder Woman trailer that got shown at Comic-Con. OMG, it looks phenomenal. She is kicking butt and taking names. Sign me up. I am so excited for this film now. I'm hopeful. But wow, the costume's awesome. The action that they're showing you is awesome. She is awesome. Awesome sauce. Gimme now.
And they bumped up the color, at least in the footage, of her costume.
They bumped up the color, at least in the footage and the costume. They actually had the costumes on display at the DC booth. Not only the current Wonder Woman costumes, they had Linda Carter's original 1970s Wonder Woman costume from season 2.
Yes,
on
the
display.
CBS years. Totally staring at the Linda Carter suit for ages, just in regards to, here's one right in front of me. Trying to look at the details. This one wasn't exactly in the best condition compared to some others. A lot of beadwork had fallen off of it. Nevertheless, it's iconic.
Totally iconic. And I'm really digging the new version of the Wonder Woman suit that they're showing. I mean, the one that we saw originally in the Batman vs. Superman film, it was all right. I just wish the colors had been popped a little more. And they popped the colors, and now it's like, yes, gimme. I've always loved Wonder Woman. I was a huge Wonder Woman fan from the George Perez relaunch. I followed that series forever and ever and ever. And I was very sad when they, relaunched it because I thought, why? It was fine. It was perfect the way it was. I just got the new Wonder Woman coloring book, which has art from George Perez. Everybody's in there. It's fabulous. If you are a Wonder Woman fan, and if you are a fan of these adult coloring books that are popular right now, go out and find the Wonder Woman coloring book, because it's the art from all these comics, all these fabulous artists there for you to color.
I would also like to preference that when we say adult coloring books, we just mean they're for grown-ups. They're not.
Yes, there's nothing that is not suitable for children in these books.
They're just a little more advanced.
Yes, the coloring between the lines might be a little more complicated.
Especially for me, because I haven't been able to use a coloring book since they took away the big crayons.
If you see it and you like to do that sort of thing, definitely get it. You'll love it.
I love going to Comic-Con. I generally don't really find much in the way of complaining about Comic-Con itself. But the only complaint I really had about this year's Comic-Con was something they had zero control over, and that was the weather.
It was hot, muggy, and humid. It felt more like Dragon Con in Atlanta than Comic-Con in San Diego.
Yeah, it was very uncomfortable. I mean, we've been going to Comic-Con for, close to about 25 years now?
Long time. Not as long as some, but, we're vets. And I have to say that this has been the most physically uncomfortable as far as temperature-wise I've been at that con, with the exception for the 1 year when it was known that one of the air conditioning units at the convention center had died and broken down, so that they did not have complete air conditioning throughout the center. And that's what it felt like. It felt like to me there was some air conditioning problems, because even inside you were hot and muggy.
I felt muggy. I didn't feel as hot inside. I was more comfortable inside, but anytime I stepped out, whether it was in the sales pavilion, I mean, all you had to do was get up to at least the sales pavilion area, and you were already feeling it.
Well, no, it was better inside than outside, but it was still too muggy inside. And normally when you're running air conditioning and everything's running properly, it dries the air out some. And I was not getting any air dryage.
Air dryage. Okay.
Air dryage would have been wonderful.
We make up some new words here.
Hey, yes, we's progressive.
The weather was really my only real issue, because we park off-site, because we're not staying at a hotel in the gas lamp anymore.
We've been very fortunate the last couple of years. We've had some wonderful friends who are willing to put us up and put up with all our comings and goings at the late night and the early morning, and being dead zombies wandering around their house. So thank you very much to put up with us. It really helps you to afford the con a little more, because let's face it, San Diego Comic-Con is not necessarily the cheapest con in the world to attend.
No, like I said, we used to be able to book the hotels, stay right across the street, or attached to the convention center itself. But it's very popular. I don't complain about that. Everybody wants to go. I don't complain about that. The lottery system, I don't complain about that, other than when I don't get in. But I do understand it's popular. It's part of popular culture now. And I accept that.
There's only so many slots available, and there's way more people that want to go and attend than there are slots available. So the fairest way is to lottery it. I get it. I understand it. When I'm on the losing side of the lottery, I don't always appreciate it, but I do understand and I do get it. A lot of people don't realize that not only is there a attendance ticket lottery, there is also a hotel lottery to be able to book rooms through the con to get a better rate. And then there's also a whole separate deal where there's a parking lottery, where you apply and sign up and hope that you make it into one of the pre-purchase lottery groups to buy parking spaces at the different parking garages in the different locations near and around the convention area. Some are managed by Ace, some are in the various hotels, some are in the convention center itself, although you have to get really lucky on the lottery to get those.
So we're roughly about a 15-minute walk from our parking spot to the convention center through the gas lamp district, which is gorgeous.
It's a great, it's not a bad walk, other than this year the heat was really making it hard.
Yeah, I was feeling very, very toasty by the time I got into the convention center, and tried to stay inside as long as I could.
Also at the con, there were new badges that were in effect. They were doing I think it's RIF scanning.
Something like that.
Where you had to actually tap your badge when you enter and then tap it when you leave. All in all, I thought the implementation of this went fairly well. I didn't see a lot of backups and snags.
I had zero problems with it.
You know, it's one of the ways that they're trying to cut down on scalpers and counterfeiters and people sneaking into the con, because there's only so much room, and it has been shut down as far as entrance into the con in years past by the fire marshal because there were just too many people.
That started in 2007.
That started in 2007, and that's part of the reason why nowadays it's a lot harder to get in the con, because they have to really monitor that to keep the con doors open, or the fire marshal will close you down.
Now, there was quite a few people who technically attended the San Diego Comic-Con without ever actually getting tickets or going into the convention center because there was so much going on off-site, though I didn't go to any of those.
Didn't really go to much that was off-site, but there was a ton of stuff. There were events, there were after parties, there was the Invisible Jet. They had a display off-site where you could go climb into the Invisible Jet, Wonder Woman's Invisible Jet, and get your photo taken. How cool is that? There were all sorts of cool things going on at all hours of the day and night. I mean, there was even a Pokemon Go pub crawl that was apparently hugely successful. That was actually an event put on by just a fan. Several hundred attended. It was just a fan who was attending the con, put it together last minute, posted it up on Facebook, and wham, and apparently it was a huge success. And that's just something that one person put together to make their con experience more fun. And then there's also the more corporate and structured events that have been planned forever where they have actual facilities. There's so much going on in that area. There's also like Nerdist HQ. The Nerdist, they have a whole thing that they do off-site where they basically take over a building, set up their own headquarters. Conan was there filming shows.
You're referring to Conan O'Brien. For a brief moment, I was thinking of Conan the Barbarian because that would have been way more interesting.
There may have been a Conan the Barbarian wandering around the con. I wouldn't have been surprised to see one there, but as far as I know, he was not hosting any off-site activities.
Speaking of barbarians wandering around at Comic-Con, on preview night, you had a mission.
I had such a quest. I was fangirling out. Poor Scott here was actually having to restrain me because I needed Gru. July 20th, which was preview night at Con, was the release date for the new Gru the Wanderer, Fray of the Gods, #1 of the miniseries that's just come out. And I needed it. I needed it bad.
This was the first Gru in many, 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 many years.
I needed it bad. And since we started our journey in the con over in the comic book vendor section, I was going up to people and trying to find it and quite energetically inquiring if they had Gru #1.
No, it was kind of like this. Do you have the new Gru? They would stare at her and she'd go, well, why don't you?
Give me my Gru! Give me my Gru! I need Gru!
Of course, these poor people who are coming out from Colorado and New York and Chicago with their back issues and their collectibles weren't necessarily busting out new titles this week.
Yeah, they weren't getting deliveries of the just released issues at Comic-Con. I get that. I just wanted my Gru, and I wanted it then and there. I did eventually realize that the best place to go to get my Gru would be the Dark Horse comic booth, which is where I eventually did find my Gru and purchase and acquire it. But
you went up to the very front of the people at Dark Horse, and they gave you a blank stare about the new Gru. But we did manage to run into the guy who actually stocked the stuff, knew that they had it.
Well, the front of the store had more of your collectible figurines and things like that. And the comics were more in the back. So the people at the front gave me a blank stare and almost had fangirl meltdown. But I did acquire my Gru. Yay! Mission accomplished!
And we always like spending time in Artist Alley.
Love to spend time in Artist Alley. You get to have some great conversations. You get to see some really cool artwork, meet some really nice people. I got a great print of Kitty Pryde with Lockheed by Philip Moy. Awesome. Saw it. Had to get it. It was just so perfect. It was beautiful.
I'm going to backtrack here a bit. I'm going to backtrack way back because we've been going to Comic-Con for over 20 years. And probably since about 2004 is really when we started doing the full run of Comic-Con, meaning from bell to buzzer, preview night, pretty much to the end of Sunday, trying to attend the whole con as opposed to showing up for being a day tripper, going up for the one day, picking up a ticket that day and getting in.
The days when you could stand in line and buy a ticket that day to attend that day. Yeah, those days are long gone.
But back in those days, we would go in. I'll go back to roughly about 1996, 97 or so, where we would go, and you would want to go through all the bargain bins, all the dollar bins, as it were.
I loved me a bargain bin box of old comics that you didn't know. And they wouldn't even be organized. They'd just all be schlubbed in the box, and the box would be marked like $1 each. And so you'd have to finger through each and every one. So he'd leave me there for hours going through boxes.
And you had your clipboard.
I had my clipboard of the different titles that I was trying to fill out and get back issues to and which ones I needed. I was organized back then.
But you would be camped out for hours. I would go wander the floor looking for toys, memorabilia, maybe a trade paperback, a print or a poster or something like that. But we didn't have our cell phones back then.
Well, I mean, anyways, cell reception on the con floor is lousy. But back then, cell phones weren't really that common.
We didn't even own any yet.
We didn't have any yet, but we actually invested in a pair of walkie-talkies just for use at San Diego Comic-Con, so he could leave me digging through the discount comic bins and tootle off to do whatever, and we could still find each other eventually.
Yeah, there was no texting like, hey, where are you at now?
Yeah. Well, even nowadays, that doesn't always work out so well. I mean, San Diego Comic-Con is freaking huge. Huge. I mean, there were so many. One of the things I love about going to San Diego Comic-Con is what I call hug sniping. That's when I run into somebody that I know I hardly ever get to see. They're in from out of town, out of the state, wherever, and I get a few minutes to hug them, say hi, touch base with them a little, let them know I'm happy to see them, and then you hug again and you move on, simply because so much is going on and you've each got places to be and to go. I love, even if I just get a quick moment to hug you, I'm glad I got that moment to hug you. But there are so many of my friends and stuff that I know were there that I physically never saw because it's so huge, it's so massive, and there are so many people. You can wander around there for 4 days solid and not run into a good number of people.
My favorite part of Comic-Con is the sharing it with friends.
Yes.
Sometimes I got to walk on the floor with a friend. Sometimes I would just bump into a friend and have a nice little chat. Or you make new friends.
You meet new people. We met some really awesome people this year. Some really cool artists. Had some really great conversations. There was one artist we met. Never seen her work before. It's gorgeous. Sonia Anwar. Super nice lady. Beautiful artwork. As you mentioned, it's very kind of reminiscent of...
Her work is really reminiscent between a couple different artists, but the ones that I was identifying or I was seeing, whether or not their influences on her or not, the bits I saw that I liked were the ones that kind of reminded me a little bit of Frank Thorne, who was the artist on Red Sonja that I really liked from the 70s, and the Art Nouveau artist Alphonse Mucha or Mucha or Mucha, depending on how you want to pronounce it. I've heard every single one, and I've been corrected on every single one by a so-called expert, so I don't know how you pronounce it anymore. Either way, there was a bit of that, and of course, her own take on it, her own sense on it. I mean, her sense of color and line
is beautiful, and she's really new to the field. She's mostly underground at this point, but if you get the chance to check out her artwork, it's well worth seeing. She does lovely stuff. It's beautiful. I'm glad we had the chance to run across it and actually pick up some prints now while you can, because I think eventually she's going to be a really hot item.
She's wonderful. We literally stumbled on her. At least I really stumbled on her because I was standing at another booth talking to a friend at their booth for quite a bit. And actually, quite often, coming out to the booth, and my friend wasn't there. So I was checking in to see when they were going to be back in the booth, when they could be back in the booth.
And Sonia was right next door.
Right next to her.
Super nice, super personable, and extraordinarily talented. Wonderful work. Just beautiful stuff.
Exactly.
And this was actually her very first San Diego Comic-Con. So it was her first experience to the whole thing, which was awesome.
And her comic that she has, which is currently self-published, is 1001. That's the name of it, 1001. which is kind of loosely based on 1001 Arabian Nights.
Nights, yes. Well worth checking out if you get the opportunity. Super nice lady. Super cool artwork. I think she's going to go places. I really do. Someone to watch.
Something very, very fresh about her work that I really enjoyed.
Very fresh. Very fresh. And we also had a wonderful conversation with Stuart Sager, the artist. Picked up a good number of his prints because they're awesome.
I don't want to say he's relatively new. For a guy who's been reading comics for over, 40 odd years like myself, I refer to anybody, who's done it for the past 10 years or whatever as being new. But Stuart, the ones I know of were like him doing Rom and The Walking Dead. But his work, I'm not going to say is derivative because it's not that. There's influences, just like any artist. And I simply said to him, do you like Bill Sienkiewicz? And he went on for about 15 minutes straight on Bill Sienkiewicz in a good way, in an insightful way. And we had just we talked about Neil Adams, and we were just talking about everybody.
It was a really, really cool conversation. And in the course of it, of course, you're flipping through his print book. And he also had some of the original artwork that some of the prints were based on in his book. And it's amazing to see the original. I mean, the prints are awesome, but it's amazing to see the originals as well.
Some of those original colors, because
he has such a fabulous use of color and light, beautiful stuff. If you get a chance to meet him at a con, check him out. Check out his prints. Wow, beautiful stuff.
I mean, I bought more prints of his stuff than anybody else there at the con.
Well, it was just hard to choose,
Yeah. And also, you had a great deal. Great art at great prices.
Great art at great prices. No, they were a fabulous deal, and it was so hard to choose because he had so much in his print book, and I'm like, ooh, what
it's like that
awesome,
Dr. Fate is just...
Dr. Fate is awesome. Ooh, but this one's great, too.
Look at the Cyclops and...
Oh, man, the Cyclops. Oh, and the Batgirl, fabulous work.
We're presently trying to figure out our wall space and framing budget.
Yeah, that's gonna... Well, actually, we need a freaking huge wall because somebody over there, I talked about the things that I couldn't pass up that seemed to be like laser burning at me and I just had to have, but somebody over there just had to have this massive, huge print, which I gotta say, now that was an amazing deal.
Well, it's not just an amazing deal, it's an amazing piece. Arthur Adams, the wonderful, legendary, talented artist, was at his booth working on commissions, as you do.
As you do.
Just quietly working away.
Trying to get through them all.
And I'm just fanboying over all the different prints and sketchbook compilations that he had, just going, I need to get some Arthur Adams stuff. I really got to pick up some Arthur Adams stuff. We did the podcast quite a few podcasts ago of his work on New Mutants and the X-Men crossover when they went to Asgard, and how much I dug his work in the 90s.
Yep.
I was rekindled with that fandom, looking through his stuff. He's right there. I'm just looking through his stuff. And there was this print for Original Sin, which I haven't busted out a measuring tape, but that thing's probably about 4 feet by 6 feet wide. It is huge. In color.
Awesome, beautiful, amazing.
And it is just like this intricately drawn and painted and colored illustration of the Marvel universe. You had practically everybody in there, whether it was Spider-Man or Magic or the X-Men, the Hulk,
everybody's in there.
The Watcher.
Everybody's in there.
I just kept looking. I just kept falling.
The more you look, the more you see. It's amazing.
Yeah, I just kept falling into this poster. I don't even want to say this poster, but this print. The one that he had on display was actually on a table, and he had other work on top of it, black and white and color prints.
Because there just wasn't enough room.
Right, and he didn't have it hanging behind him. So I asked him, do you have a smaller version of this that I could look at? And he just looked at me like, a smaller version? I said, just for me to look at, whether it's on a phone or something. I'm just curious what all is in this illustration, because the bits and pieces I see, I dig. I'm just curious what it looks like as a whole. So he busted out a print and put it on top of everything for us to look. And I was just like, oh, just seal it up and wrap it up. I'm sold. He
had you hook, line, and sinker. But
gosh, it was so good. And I'm like, you can sign it, right? That was my Mondo Daddy single print type of purchase. And then later on, because I kept visiting this one booth throughout the entire con, trying to make up my mind.
Gee, I wonder which booth that was.
It would be Neil Adams, no relation. Neil Adams. Now, I've gushed over this guy. Last episode that we did about the X-Men.
Our previous episode.
That's an asterisk, folks. Go check it out. I gushed over Neil Adams. I've been gushing over Neil Adams for years and years and years. And I went over to his booth. I mean, if I could afford, and someday I will, be able to afford like a commission.
Or original.
Or an original. I would be so there. But I kept going over to the booth, looking at the various prints to see which one spoke to me the most. And the reason why I say spoke to me the most is because so many of them were speaking to me.
They were all babbling at you. I watched you stand in front of that booth with glazed eyes and little drool coming out the corner of your mouth.
Like,
going,
that one's cool. But that one's cool. But that one's cool. And that one's cool. There was just so many of them that I was like, it was worse than Pokemon. I want them all.
Oh, gotta catch them all.
But yeah, I literally was just stumped. So I kept coming back and looking and seeing which one I wanted the most. In the end, I ended up picking up two because I still couldn't decide till the very end. But one of the things I really want to point out about Neil Adams that I think is really, really cool, that I really dig beyond the artwork, is that I understand that there's artists out there who are in demand to be at this panel and that panel and be pulled over for this thing and this appearance. And maybe they may be a guest that might be on the floor somewhere. They might be at their booth at some point, maybe. Neil Adams is there, to my knowledge, bell to buzzer. I'm talking about right before preview night starts, all the way to when it closes at the very end. He eats at his table. He is there. You want to find Neil Adams? You go to his booth. He's there.
I'm sure at some point he leaves to do necessary functions.
I don't know. I don't know if I think he must just do yoga or something to work through that, because by gosh, every time I look,
every time
he's right
we went there, he was right there every time.
And this has been at any con I've seen him at, whether it's been at Big Wow or what have you. Neil, when he's there, he's there. And he's very articulate. Sometimes while I'm busy oogling over stuff, I'm listening to a little bit of the conversations or the various things that he's talking about with either aspiring artists or collectors or what have you. And then keep in mind, this isn't the first time I've met Neil Adams or bought something from him, but I'm still always in awe. And when we picked up the prints that I finally decided on.
And it wasn't easy. Let me tell you, it wasn't easy for him to choose.
One of them was from the X-Men series that we had just discussed, and it's got Havoc on the front cover, running right towards the cover.
Number 58.
But you have Havoc rushing towards the cover, almost like an orange-yellow kind of thing. But you could still kind of see through his chest, through his energy readout on his costume.
The circles.
The circles. You could still see the X-Men team within that, which is brilliant composition. When I was buying this print from Neil actually brings up, he says, now, how do you introduce a new X-Men on the cover of a comic and still show the original team? How do you show the original team of 5 members and the new guy, and he's got to show up as being prominent? Simple. You make a hole in his chest.
Yes, I really enjoyed listening to Neil talking not only about that cover, but also about his design concept for Havoc.
Yes.
The fact that he kept telling the inker not to highlight Havoc's suit.
Right.
No highlights.
He said, I was trying to tell the inker, I said, Tom Palmer. He goes, yes, I was telling Tom, stop trying to put highlights on this suit. It's an energy-absorbing suit. It should be all black.
No highlights, which is awesome that he puts this much thought into the character and the art behind the character. Loved that little bit of insight. Loved hearing him talk about it and his design. And also talking about the Living Monolith cover.
Right.
And how iconic that was with him and his design there. really, those are the little interactions. They may only be a few minutes long when you get the chance to interact with somebody like that, but even those just little small insights are so awesome to get. To get that glimpse into how their creative process works. What were they thinking when they conceived of this and drew it and came up with it? Love that sort of thing. That's what the con experience really gels at for me. That and interacting with the other people you meet.
I like checking out stuff.
I like checking out stuff too, but that sort of thing is just awesome.
Well, that's what I mean. There's so much stuff and people and interactions to have. It's a convention. I like bumping into a buddy and showing him some corgi green-horned black beauty I found in a box or something, and we'll just oogle over it for, a half hour or something. Hey, check it out. It's got the disc and everything. Once upon a time. Happened, really. It was lots of fun. One of my favorite things to do at Comic-Con, especially, is to meet the people in the craft of creating comics. That's the writers, that's the inkers, that's the colorists, it's the pencilers, even editors. I say even editors because some of them have played both one of those roles over time. It's all in that thing of creating this stuff that, well, let's face it, we're doing a podcast talking about our love,
our crushes
for comics. And that's where it starts. I love the movies. I love the cartoons. I like the toys. I like the posters. I like the books. I like the T-shirts. Man, I really do like the T-shirts. I got way too many. No, there's never enough T-shirts. But it has to start somewhere. And for me, it starts with the comic.
That's ground zero. That's where I love the movies. I love the comics. I love the T-shirts. I love the merch and stuff. But ground zero is the comics and the stories and art and character development that takes place in those comics. That's what makes me love a good movie version. That's what makes me hate a bad movie version. But that's what draws me out to see it anyways, in the hopes that it'll be a good movie version, is coming from that core, the comics that I crushed on. That's my love.
So it's always nice when you have an opportunity to tell some of these folks who are behind these things that you love, thank you.
These are people who made things that had a lot of impact on you, maybe at a very young age, when you were impressionable, or for whatever reason, they had an impact on your psyche in some way, shape, or form, at least for me. So the opportunity to say thank you, or even just sometimes be in their presence, can be a little overwhelming sometimes. It's wonderful. So many of these creators are still around, still out there, and you can go to a con. You don't have to go to San Diego Comic-Con. There are Comic-Cons all over the place, and go there, see who's there. You don't have to buy anything from them. If there's somebody who had a significant impact on you in any way, shape, or form, created a character you loved, wrote a storyline you loved, did some artwork you loved, just say, love your work. Thank you so much. They don't get a lot of one-on-one feedback always. So it's nice.
You don't have to go all fanboy or all fangirl in a creepy manner with them. Can you move into my place and paint the wall in my bathroom?
Can I live under your bed?
Yeah, no. That's what we call crossing the line.
Yes. Just thanks, love your work. So happy I had the opportunity to tell you. Move on.
Absolutely. But that's exactly one of the things I love about Comic-Con out there is the artists and the back issues and the new stuff and all the other kinds of stuff that encompass the world of comics, whether they're movies, TVs, or whatnot. There's been a lot of criticisms over the years. It says San Diego Comic-Con is no longer about the comics anymore. That's not true. There is so much comics there. There is so much in the artists there. There is so much about that comic book world there. If that's what you seek, that you will find there. You can have your own little pocket. You don't need to go to the movie stuff. You don't need to go to the TV stuff if you don't want to.
It's there if you want it. They're embracing so many aspects of popular culture and things that comics have touched and impacted on. But the core of what Comic-Con was back in the old days, it's still there. You can still find it. There are still plenty of comic book vendors. There are still plenty of artists and writers. Just, you got to go visit them. That's the ticket. You just got to go to them.
And plenty of panels talking about it.
Tons. There's something there for everyone. And that's the beautiful thing about San Diego Comic-Con, is because it is such a massive, huge undertaking. You can really make it whatever you want. You want to do panels, do panels. You want to do comics, do comics. It's your con to make your experience. It's a choose your own adventure con, really. That's where we're going to leave it this week. I hope you enjoyed our San Diego Comic-Con recap. I know we sure enjoyed going. And if you get the chance to go, if you got to go this year, if you hope to go in a future year, it's well worth checking out at least once. If not, find a local con. Find something easy to you. Check it out. Support your local cons. You can have just as great of a time at a small local con as you can at the big cons. It's all up to you. You get out what you put in. So until next week, I am Vickie Sebring.
And I'm Scott Sebring.
And this has been My Comic Crush. My Comic Crush is a production of Sebring Arts. Executive producers Vickie Sebring and Scott Sebring. Sound production and theme music by Scott Sebring. Special guest provided by Blackmail and Shameless Begging. For more episodes in this series, you can visit our website at mycomiccrush.com or find us on iTunes, Podcast Republic, or wherever fine podcasts can be found. That's all for now, so go out and read something. Break the seal.